and welcome to the Soft Cover, the Print's platform for the launch of select non-fiction books. I'm Snehesh Alex Philip, Senior Associate Editor at The Print. I look after defense and security issues. Today we have a very interesting book because it is a book with a very interesting topic and has also been written by a very interesting person. Well, the book that I'm talking about is The Kashmir Conundrum, The Quest for Peace in the Troubled Land, written by the former Army Chief, General NC Vij. Now, today's soft cover is also interesting in a different way because we are joined not just by General Vij, but also by Dr. Karan Singh, who's a former Union Minister and member of the Parliament. We also joined in by Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain. He's a retired general of the Indian Army, and he commanded the 15 Corps, that is the Chinar Corps, which is based in Kashmir. And then, of course, we have Ambassador Satish Sharma, a former diplomat, and right now the vice chairman of the think tank Vivekananda International Foundation. Welcome to the Print, sir.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So, General Vij, before we go ahead and launch this book, I would request you to, say some words about the book, what it is all about.
Actually, I will like to start with the thing that born and brought up in the state of J&K, both me and my wife, we have seen the state going through many stages of turbulence, right from 47, even though we were very small at that time, and the Kabyle invasion. And thereafter, I would like to say that this book is not really a reflection of my childhood impression, but a dispassionate outcome of my experiences, various jobs in the decision-making level, which I did in the army, like the DGMO during Kargil War, like the Vice Chief during the Jaish Mohammed attack on the Parliament, and also the thirdly, when I was the chief immediately after that. Yeah. So this book is as an outcome of that. But before I move further, 3 points which are very relevant to the entire story. Number one is that the accession instrument which was signed by Maharaja Hari Singh was the same as signed by the other princely states. And it said very clearly that J&K is an integral part of India and this process is irreversible. So there is no doubt on that part at all. Number two, Sheikh Abdullah gave a very long speech in his constituent assembly and said that the best way for the Kashmiris to go is to join the Union of India. Of course, some concessions will be made to them. And those were Article 370 and 35A. And thereafter, soon after that, Pandit Nehru also and Indira Gandhi also at a subsequent stage said that this will get worn out with time, and these are the transient arrangements only. The third is that the state is a very peculiar state. It is multilingual and multi-regional, and all the three communities are different. There are Dogras, there are Kashmiri Muslimans, and there are also the Ladakhis. And the non-Muslim communities are very unhappy that the Muslim communities have the maximum bulk of the share and they don't get their due. So there is a great amount of unhappiness on that account in the state, and that animosity only grows deeper. Now, with this, I move on to the thing that the 65-71 war, we took no advantage. We let the things pass. And the line of control remained the line of control. And we couldn't get, despite leaving 95,000 prisoners unconditionally, get it converted to international border. Similarly, thereafter, the Afghan war ended and the Pakistanis started looking at India. They had an experience behind them because of the Punjab problem, which was a precursor to this issue. And they did a good job. They started with a hybrid war. And in that, the radicalization came in, the insurgency came to stay. And the worst of all, the ethnic cleansing was done. And after that, I move on to the insurgency as such. It went many ups and downs. And Kargil was a big shame for Pakistan, because for Kargil, they were preparing when Mr. Vajpayee was there in Pakistan on a peace mission. But when 2016, when Burhan Wani came on the scene, the insurgency picked up, and four things happened. Even the children became the commanders. Children of 15 to 18 years of age. The women joined the insurgency in a big way. And the third thing was the street turbulence and stone pelting became the common feature. And the fourth was the aspect of the police stations being raided by them quite often to snatch the weapon. So insurgency became a very major thing. And then some few things more happened. Pathankot was attacked, Nagrota was attacked, Samba was attacked, and also car in 2019 loaded with the RDX smashed into a CRPF convoy and 40 people were killed. But that was the end of patience of India, and India reacted by attacking in Balakot. And the world saw that it was a new India. It was not the same old India which will accept any tinkering with their borders of this kind. So that's how it went on. But in 2019, the government of India had had enough, and they decided that time had come to take a decisive action. And what they did, they broke up the state into two because they felt that the Kashmiris are not understanding that their exclusivity, which they have assigned to themselves, means that they are wanting to be independent. They are also wanting to perhaps have an option to join Pakistan, and they want autonomy. So any of the three options, so which was not acceptable to them, and they broke up the state into two union territories. But the strange thing is that the Kashmiris didn't react because they were too scared, because they found that the Pakistanis could do nothing about it and their leaders could be thrown into the house arrest anytime as the government of India wanted. The world also accepted it as an internal matter of India. China did try in the Security Council, but did not succeed because they said it is a bilateral issue. So these are the things which happened in Kashmir. If I have a minute or two more, I will finish with one or two things more.
Absolutely, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Now the thing is that we do not have at present, few weaknesses we have. We do not have a doctrine of the insurgency. We do not have a policy. We do not have a strategy. It has to be worked on. We have not really worked on the perception management, in which the Pakistanis have done a very good job. And there is a requirement to set up a perception management body at the high level, which has access to the highest level and also to the finances. And this should be of people of all shades. And it must be many grades higher than the Sadbhavana which the army was doing. And next thing which I like to do is say that we must always maintain a pressure on Pakistan by way of threatening them that we will leave the Indus water arrangement, and not only threaten, but be prepared to do it, and also tell them that we will recognize the Durand line. The next point I like to mention is that the security paradigm has undergone much change. Chinese came into India in 2020, and there was a problem. But till we went on to the Kailash range on 30th of August 20, they won't negotiate. After we took 5 points there, that is places like Rizangla, Rachilla, Mukpuri, and others, which gave you a direct access to the Exciting Road, they settled, came on the Mother Earth, and now there are only two friction points. One is the area of Depsang, and other is the hot spring. But the point is, China and Pakistan together are a problem, and anytime you can have a stage of conflict. I come on to the last but one point, and that is Afghanistan. A lot of people feel that with Afghanistan, Pakistan will put pressure and they will be able to raise the level of insurgency in Kashmir. But I don't think it is going to happen. We have a very strong grid in Kashmir, and we will be able to manage it very, very well. In hinterland, well, they may try something, but if we have an internal cohesion, which is we have today, and also make sure that we have good intelligence, we will be able to manage it well. Coming to the last point, and that is we are a democratic country, and ultimately we have to come to a political resolution. Soon after, on 24th of June, the Prime Minister held a meeting, and he said, Dil se duri or Delhi se duri ko hatana padega, which everybody agreed. And also beauty was that nobody raised the issue of 370, and it was not a negotiation killer. Soon after the delimitation is over, I think we must have elections and have a popular government in place. And in the meanwhile, the state administration must raise its standard many notches higher, so that when they hand over to the next government, they hand over a government which is very well functional. The insurgency may take 8 to 10 years to go, because till the Pakistan's back is broken financially, it will carry on. But I think the level will go down many fold. In the meanwhile, in next 2 to 3 years, the level must go down. And last but not the least, what I like to say is, I think the litmus test of peace having returned to Kashmir will be only when the Kashmiris have returned to Kashmir in their homeland. And that would be the ultimate test for India. It may take time, but a day will come like that. Thank you.
Thank you, General Vij. You've covered a lot of points of your book, and viewers, I've read this book. Unlike, as General Vij said, whenever we read about books on Jammu and Kashmir, the focus tends to be on Kashmir alone, the Kashmir part. The focus is not on the other two parts that General Vij mentioned, which was, of course, the Jammu and the Ladakh. We tend to focus only on the Kashmir, but this book actually delves much deeper into the history, the present, as well as the future, and offers some solutions to how we can actually tackle the Kashmir problem. So before I go ahead and ask Dr. Karan Singh to speak, let us go ahead and unveil this book. There you go. Well, yes, this is the book, The Kashmir Conundrum, The Quest for Peace in a Troubled Land, published by Harper Collins and written by, of course, General NC Vij. And thank you so much, General, for writing this book. There you go. Going ahead, we have, of course, Dr. Karan Singh with us. He needs no introduction. He's one of the voices, the strongest voice that comes out from Jammu and Kashmir. So I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Sir.
Thank you. Gen NC Vij, the author of this book, Lieutenant General Hasnain, Ambassador Satish, Chandra, viewers of this program, visible and invisible, mostly invisible nowadays, distinguished members of the armed forces, and friends. The title of this book reminds me of something I said in Parliament. I was asked on one occasion, the Jammu Kashmir ki kya position hai? What I said was, अजीब दास्तां है ये, कहाँ शुरू कहाँ खत्म, ये मंजिलें हैं कौन सी न वो समझ सके न हम. As you know, this is a favorite song. I'd love to have sung it, but I can't do it on the screen. And it is really a very complicated state. Now, we must remember, first of all, that this Dogra kingdom was set up by my ancestor Maharaja Gulab Singh in 1846. It consisted of the Kashmir Valley, of the Jammu region, of Gilgit-Baltistan and Ladakh. It was 84,000 square miles. It was the largest Indian state during the British times. And now, of course, it is multi-regional. You must remember, it was never an integrated state, never a unilateral state. It was multilinguistic, multi-religious, multicultural. Now, what has happened is in 1947, we lost Gilgit-Baltistan as a result of a coup organized by the British, in fact. And then we lost Aksai Chin also later in 1962. And now the Saksham Valley has been apparently given away by Pakistan to China. So it is a very difficult state, multi-dimensional state. And my association, of course, like that of General Vij, goes back all the way to my birth, as it were. I was born abroad, actually, but I came back when I was 6 weeks old, and I've lived all my life. I've written up a lot of my material in my autobiography and various other books. But it's very interesting that General Vij, who is also from the state, has written this book in a very detached way. He hasn't shown any bias one way or the other, and he has given a detailed account of historical developments from 1947 onwards and political developments. It's a rapid history, mind you. It's not a detailed history, but it's a very interesting thing because people forget the historical background of these events. For example, the debates in the United Nations we've almost forgotten, people have forgotten that it was before the United Nations. Very, very intense debate before the United Nations. People have forgotten that a plebiscite administrator had been appointed.
Yeah.
Admiral Chester Nimitz of the US Navy. So it was a very difficult situation we went through. And he has talked about, he's given the history, and he's also talked about security aspect, because coming from a former army chief, he is very well poised to give us a security review. And he has also made suggestions for the future. So these are the three things that he's done. He's given us a historical perspective. He's given us his view of the strategic situation. And he has also given us some positive suggestions for going ahead. In fact, his final chapters, the road ahead and conclusion and the epilogue, that sums up exactly what the book is all about. Now, the general, of course, has spoken for himself. But let me just say that there are many dimensions to JNK. First of all, there is an international dimension. I know some people don't like to say that, but the fact of the matter is that both our nuclear-armed neighbors are in the state. So therefore, unless we write off those areas, we can't say it is not an international problem. So that has to be tackled at some point in time. How it is done is a different matter. I won't go into that, but that is a dimension always looming over us. Then that in place leads to the strict security problems, which are constantly there. It's one of those days where there's always some tension somewhere or the other. And post 5th of August 2009, the whole state has now been, as it were, even further decimated, and is now ended up for the time being as a union territory. Which I must say, I don't want to go into the politics, but nobody either in Jammu or in Kashmir is happy at being demoted to a union territory. I mean, JNK was a special state with a special status and everything. Ab wo special status to chhoro, jo normal status bhi chala gaya, even less than Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. So that is one point which is has to be kept at the back of our minds. Now, the other thing that we have to do, as he has said, is to restart the political activity. And that can only be done by first delimitation, then giving back statehood, and then having elections. I personally feel that we should, if we have elections, we should elect for a state government, not for a union territory. Because the powers of the union territory are very limited. Why should our elections only be for a limited union territory? We've always been a proud state. We should get our statehood back. And there should be elections, I agree. And the political parties should participate in that. And there will be, whatever result will come out, it's a democratic system. Another point is the economic problems. During the last 2 years, the state has suffered intense economic distress because the tourist season was totally destroyed for 2 years virtually. And the mainstay, as you know, in the Kashmir Valley is tourism. And even in Jammu, the goods that flow from Jammu into Kashmir, or the yatris to Mata Vaishno Devi, they are all helping the economy. So we've suffered heavy economic losses. I think they have to be now recompensed. And then the great advances that have been promised with the abolition of 370 and 35A, let's see, it hasn't happened yet. I mean, a lot of projects have been started, and maybe it is too soon to expect a concrete result. But so far, there's not very much impact of the new administration, as it were. General Hasnain said, General Vij said an absolutely correct point that you have to give an outstanding administration. If you have it directly under the control of the Home Ministry, then it has to be a top-class administration. The governor is doing his best. but there's still a lot of leeway to be made up. And I think that is now the third point which he has raised, which I would like to raise, is not actually raised, is the humanitarian crisis. Apart from the Kashmiri Pandits, which itself has been a tragedy, such a talented and brilliant community had to leave lock, stock and barrel. But even the Kashmiri Muslims have suffered terrible attrition. Tens of thousands of young people have been killed. There are graveyards in almost every village that you go. Where is the humanitarian aspect? क्या हमारे दिल को दर्द होती है क्या? Do we feel with the people of Jammu and Kashmir? Or we simply say Kashmir हमारा है. Kashmir तो है India. लेकिन कश्मीर के दिल भी हमारे साथ होने चाहिए. So we've got to also look at that humanitarian crisis and try and bring some empathy. And finally, I think my time may be coming to an end. The radicalization of Kashmiri youths, a point which General Vij makes very clearly, is something which is very disturbing and which will take a long time. But what has happened is the beautiful Sufi tradition that we had, where the Sufis and the Sants, they had similar sort of worship at each other's shrines and all. That is now disappearing with the advent of Wahhabi Islam, thanks to the funds that they're getting from foreign countries, particularly from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Now, that is something we have to look into and see how we can try and bring back that glorious Kashmiriyat. The heart of Kashmiriyat is the Sufi culture. As far as Jammu is concerned, we are proud Dogras. We ruled the state for 100 years. And now the Kashmiris have ruled for 75 years. Now the Home Ministry is ruling for 2 years. Let's see now how the situation develops. But in any case, in my foreword, as you may have seen, I have covered many of the points that General Saab has written. I'd like to congratulate General Vij for having put down his thoughts in a very coherent and disciplined manner. And I'm sure this book will be of great value to all those in India and abroad who are interested in this Kashmir imbroglio, or this Kashmir Conundrum. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dr. Saab, thank you so much. I completely agree with you. And as far as statehood is concerned, I think the government of India is on record in the parliament saying that this division of the state into the union territory, eventually statehood would be restored. Of course, the delimitation process is already on, and hopefully elections would be held soon. Thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Now I'll request Ambassador Satish Chandra and General Hasnain to give us an insight into their thought process of this book and the Kashmir issue as such. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me say at the outset that I am delighted and feel privileged to be a part of this very distinguished panel, particularly as we are discussing a book which is fascinating and very educative. I think Harper Collins should be very happy because this book will have considerable readership, both in India and abroad, because the author has intuitive insights as a person from the state on Kashmir, and he brings to it great hands-on expertise. And here I would like to mention, it hasn't been so stated, but it is a fact that much of the decline of infiltration and terrorism in the state is due to General Vij's personal efforts to ensure that the fence was put up, which is responsible for that. Now, I would like to say that while many books have been written on Kashmir, this one scores over most because it is perhaps the most comprehensive. And in one place, you have everything on Kashmir covered. I think the author misses out very little, whether it is the demographic situation in the state, whether it's the religion, whether it's Kashmiriyat, whether it's the Kashmiri mindset, whether it is the manner in which the Pakistanis invaded Kashmir, its accession to India, the constitutional relationship of the state with India, as Mr. Karan Singh had said rightly, that the UN aspect has been covered very fully, in fact, in this right up to the present day as to what all happened there. And also the India-Pakistan wars that were fought, the current situation on terrorism, Article 370, the modification of the article, and also, I think very valuable are the recommendations, and there are a host of those. Most of the authors' assessments are impeccable and perceptive, and I'd like to list out a few of them. One, the accession of Jammu and Kashmir to India is legally and constitutionally complete. Taking the Kashmir issue to the UN Security Council and accepting a ceasefire were major, and I'm quoting, blunders. A plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir as proposed by the UN was impossible, as Pakistan did not fulfill the condition of vacation of aggression. Kashmir is actually merely a symptom of India-Pakistan differences, and it arises from Pakistan's desire to break up India and its quest for parity. Both these 1965 and 71 conflicts were, in quotes, disasters for Pakistan. Again, India missed a golden opportunity to settle the Kashmir issue for good at Simla in 72. It goes on in this fashion, and the point that is made, which General Vij referred to, that India has never had a well-defined and consistent national strategy to address Pakistani-sponsored terrorism. He mentioned the Balakot strike. This is a paradigm shift because this really sets the tone of India exercising the right to retaliate as it deems fit. How, when, where. Also, he says, rightly, that Pakistan is unlikely to desist from its proxy war against India and is determined to grab Kashmir. There are two assessments or conclusions with which I have a slightly different view. One is the point made that Simla can be taken both as a success and a failure. I am a bit of a hardliner here. I think it was a failure. And I feel that. On Article 370, he mentions, in the book mentions, that it served its purpose at the time as Sheikh Abdullah. It was necessary to have him on our side. I think it really wasn't necessary because once the state had acceded to India, Sheikh Abdullah or anyone else doesn't matter. The accession is complete legal and we don't have to pay the price of 370. So that's where I differ. I think a very valuable part of the book is a telling comparison that has been made in it, and this is instructive for everybody, about the development in the areas of Jammu and Kashmir which are with India and those with Pakistan. And those with India score handsomely, whether it is on governance issues, whether it is on development issues, whether it's on the issues of enjoyment of civil and political rights. This is an excellent piece that he has on it, and I've rarely seen something so well done. The book is, of course, rich in recommendations, and some of those which were designed to pressurize Pakistan, which is what General Vij mentioned, are novel and innovative, such as our threatening to walk away from the Indus Waters Treaty and not recognizing the Durand Line. We haven't taken a view on this yet. But what he is advocating is that we, at an appropriate time, do not recognize and make it known that we will not recognize the Durand Line. What we will do is go along with our friends in Afghanistan at an appropriate time and go along with them rather than with Pakistan. This is the thing. One area of the recommendation that this is a long-standing difference that I have had with General Vij, and he knows it well, is he had suggested that we should have a look and revisit our nuclear doctrine and also get into the business of making tactical nuclear weapons. My own view is different. My view is that our doctrine has served us well. And there are many reasons why we should not really go in for tactical nuclear weapons. But the bulk of the recommendations, I think, are solid. They are excellent. And I think the government would do very well to look at them. The single most important ones of these recommendations, apart, of course, from looking at de-radicalization, which Mr. Karan Singh also mentioned, which is spot on. But the one on perception management, he has got many new ideas on this. And I think this is something which India needs to look at in a holistic manner as to how we do that, because very often we lose the battle because it's won in the minds of other people due to narratives which are simply not there and which should be there. So that is, I think, something that is imperative. And in conclusion, all I'd like to say is that congratulations, General Saab. I think an outstanding book, and I think it's really going to be a bestseller. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your insights about this book. And of course, General Vij talks about perception management. I think we'll all agree that there is a lot more that India needs to do, not just when it comes to perception management in Kashmir, but overall also. And I'll give the example of the Balakot strike that both General Vij and the Ambassador has mentioned. Even the Balakot strike, we lost the initial advantage basically because of a perception management issue, or let's say information warfare that was unleashed. Thank you so much, Ambassador. General Hasnain, sir, your take on this book.
Thank you very much, Snehesh. Jai Hind to everyone, all our viewers, and my compliments to, congratulations to General Vij, my former chief, and my compliments also to my fellow panelists, very, very senior to me. I don't know what I am doing in a panel such as this. They are giants in their own way. I have no business to be speaking here, actually. But nevertheless, let me compliment General Vij on a very, very comprehensive book, because most books on Jammu and Kashmir don't find a comprehensivity attached to it. You see, they are either military oriented or only on history, some aspects of culture and Kashmirian and things like that. This is a book, as very correctly said, which will go very far in terms of being a reference point. But anyone who wants to really know something about the historicity, wants to know something about the last 30 years in particular, this is the book to refer to. Few points which I will allude to here. When I kept on going to Kashmir in my service, each time I used to ask people, what is my aim? And really saying, I hardly ever found a good answer given to me as to what am I doing in Kashmir. You see, this book addresses it and actually gives me that answer. The whole intention is to look at Kashmir from a military, a political, a diplomatic, a social and economic, and lastly, the most important, a psychological point. I always believed as the corps commander there that the day the last Kashmiri says Jai Hind to me, that is the day when we can hold our heads high and say we have won this war, this terrible proxy hybrid war. And this is what actually General Vij talks about out here. He's attempting to bring to everyone a broader understanding that such conflicts, hybrid conflicts as they are called, are not fought in a single domain. No single dimension, not in the political domain, not in the military domain, not in the psychological domain. It's a comprehensive aspect. It has everything into it. And that is where the importance of a strategic culture comes in. The understanding is not the military which must understand. It's the political community which must understand. It's the bureaucrats who must understand. It's the policemen who must understand. It's the youth and the students who have to understand. this is what this book is really, the worth of this book will really be realized when people realize, read this and realize how comprehensively it has addressed the whole issue. And how relevant it is goes by the fact that the 5th of August 2019 comes up on the 176th page. This book is about 409 pages. And as early as the 176th page, you start getting 5th of August and the issues related to 5th of August, they start getting discussed, which means it is absolutely up to date, right? It is, as Dr. Karan Singh very correctly said, you have to understand the history. So he has spoken a lot about the history, spoken a lot about operations, but very early in this whole timeline of the book, he has come to the most relevant issue of today and the future. And the recommendations are according to that. I will be very brief on one or two other aspects. 370, if I may take a in between view between Ambassador Satish, Chandra and General Vij, I would say 370 was relevant till the late 60s. It was important from the angle that you see you had to treat Kashmir with kid gloves in the beginning. Officially, it became a part of India, no rollback, nothing. But there was an element of dispute which was existing in the minds of the Kashmiris. You had to address them separately. I would say 1972, the Shimla Agreement, at that time, that was the time when the Article 370 should have been removed. Second time when I felt it should have been removed was 1994, when the joint resolution by all parties was brought out in the Parliament of India. That was the time when we had consensus. You see, 5th of August, we did not have consensus. At that time, when Robin Raphael was bullying India, that was the time when the entire political community came together. And I think we would have done wonders if we had taken off Article 370 in 1994. Let me come to the last part of this. You see, I am one of those who has served under General Vij. I was commander of the very important Uri Brigade during his tenure. They were almost matching times at that time. The one thing which Master Satish Chandra just alluded to, and this is an aspect of leadership which I want to bring in, which is General Vij has not mentioned the word I anywhere in this book. He doesn't allude to himself at all and his own achievements. And I've always felt that he is a very understated former chief of the army staff who has not been given his due. The fact remains that the relevance of this book, although General Vij himself says that the watershed year was 2019, I say we had an earlier watershed year. That was 2001. The year we killed 2,100 terrorists. The year our parliament was attacked. That was the most violent year of the last 50 years. It started changing things. I'm very certain that General Vij's mind actually changed around 2001. He was the DGMO, then the Army Commander, West Southern Command, and then the Vice Chief. And that's the time he took the decision on what is called the mathematics of terror. He asked a lot of people and said, what is the real trouble here? And we said, every year we kill 1,500 terrorists, but 2,000 and 2,500 managed to infiltrate. At the end of the year, we are back to square one. The mathematics of terror are always in favor of Pakistanis. And that's the time when the decision was taken to build what is called the anti-infiltration optical system, AIOS, or the LOC fence, which is a system, not just a fence, not just an obstacle. If you can imagine, I constructed 108 kilometers out. And you can ask me, the juice came out of my body and out of my men. The kind of challenge which was thrown at us at that time to construct that fence was not a joke at all. And I think it was only under his leadership, and I always talk about it, it's only General Vij who could get that done. Because as an army chief, he could get anything done. He could get almost anything done. There are many, many more achievements to his name, which have not been spoken about at all. But the greatest achievement is this in Jammu and Kashmir, changing the mathematics of terror and changing the narratives as far as this whole concept of understanding Kashmir was concerned. I'll stop at that because I've already taken up too much time, and we'll discuss this subsequently on the 27th, perhaps at the VIF. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and sir, congratulations once again to you. My compliments to my fellow panelists.
Thank you so much, General Hasnain, for this. Viewers, we come to a point where, I'll speak to General Vij to get an understanding from his book. Of course, you have heard the other speakers speaking. the book, as I mentioned earlier, delves into various aspects of the Kashmir issue. But the book also comes out with a lot of suggestions. And as Ambassador Chandra said, that the government should actually look at, somebody in the government should actually look at these suggestions, and I'm sure someone has already done so. And so my question to you, General Vij, you talk about dealing with Pakistan, and you mentioned in your book that, and I read out, another aspect that India needs to consider is whether the Pakistan army should be engaged in a dialogue in some form or the other, as no resolution of peace process with Pakistan is likely to be successful without the Pakistani army having an important say in the matter. Now, so in the current context in Pakistan, you of course have a Prime Minister Imran Khan, then you have an army chief, General Bajwa, who's there. So the big question is, who does India talk to? What is your view on this, sir?
It is very clear that any democratic government would like to talk to the democratic government on the other side. That's true. But unfortunately, the way Pakistan is structured, and it has been structured right from the time that they gained independence and they became a separate country from us, the army has ruled the roost there. And till the army gives their clearances, the government really cannot do very much. As a matter of fact, it's a well-known fact to everybody that there are 3-4 policies which only the army deals with. One is dealing with America. One is dealing with Afghanistan, dealing with all the Middle East countries. They are the ones who, and then of course India. These are the 4 countries, and Kashmir issue. These are the ones which are being dealt with by the army in a big way. Unless you take the army along, and that you can only do only after you have talked to the Pakistan, the state, and tell them that you also include the army generals as a part of the discussion. It will not work, because what the civil government may say, the army may not go along with. So that is the problem in Pakistan. It is not the problem in India, because in India we have a very simple system that the civilian government is the one which is in power, and they decide. They take the professional, of course, suggestions and take them seriously. That I've seen with my own experience. They listen to it very carefully. They like to go along with it mostly, but ultimate decision is theirs, what they want to do. But in Pakistan, it does not happen like that. So it is for that reason that unless the Pakistan government brings the army along with them, and that may be on your suggestion, but it may look to do the world that it is their own mind. Like when Imran Khan went to Pakistan, he took Bajwa along, General Bajwa along.
Yeah.
So that is obvious, what you are really looking at, and the question which you asked me, the answer really lies there, because he wanted perhaps his clearance alongside in whatever he decides with the president there. So that's what I feel, that their army's participation will be very useful. It may not be in front, it may be behind the scene, but it must be taken along in any discussion which we have with them.
Well, absolutely. There is no doubt about that. Completely agree with you on that. General, while we're talking about Kashmir, now you were someone who came up with this whole idea of fencing the LOC, which really brought down the infiltration. And over the years, we have a very strong anti-infiltration grid there, multiple layers, which ensures that the infiltration has really come down a lot. But however, the terrorism in Kashmir continues. Now, and primarily driven by the local terrorists, the local youth joining the terrorism ranks, primarily due to the radicalization that has taken place. How do you think, General Vij, is how does India counter this radicalization that is taking place? Killing terrorists who picked up arms is the easiest thing to do. That will be done in the course of the time. But how to counter radicalization, sir?
I think out of all the challenges that we face in the valley, the most serious one is the radicalization. And that is the first thing they started with when they started the insurgency in J&K. They started with radicalization as one of the first priorities. And now you see that South Kashmir is highly radicalized. Now, India has worked out quite a few models and in which we work on. But I think for radical people, the answer does not lie in violence. If we want to be only violent with them, it will not work out, because a radical is a person who has a certain belief and who will like to support that belief with the help of violence. To him, the violence is a given thing, that you reply to him in a violent manner, he will take it up as a challenge and he'll face it. I think what we need to do is bring in the clergy, which is more moderate, more modest in J&K. Unfortunately, we have most of the clergy which is from Bihar and UP, which is very high, very sort of strong in their views and much behind the time. So you need to bring in clergy which is moderate. I think Singapore model is very good. And Singapore model, they have imams, the internet imams who answer the questions of these people who come in. So radicalization is one thing which we have to really look at seriously. And this will be perhaps one of the last things to go out of Kashmir when the peace returns in that state.
General, one last question. This is regarding, of course, you mentioned about Article 370, removal of Article 370, and you say integration of Kashmir with the rest of India is very important.
Yes.
If you could explain to our viewers, what is this integration that you're talking about? How does one go about achieving this integration of Kashmir, not Jammu and Kashmir, of Kashmir specifically, with the rest of India, sir?
You see, the main problem in Kashmir is, and it is their own creation, I believe so, because I also belong to the state and I think that Kashmiris are as much a part of us as anybody else. But somehow in the Kashmiri mind, the feeling is that we are only interested in the Kashmir as a geographical area, but not in the Kashmiris as such. That is the problem. So we have to make sure that Kashmiris start believing, and that's where I think perception management is a very important part, that we bring in a plausible story where they understand that, look, we are not only interested in the Kashmir as a geography, our geographical area as such, but in the Kashmiris as much as our brothers. And that's the reason when Pandit Nehru had an agreement with the Sheikh, that is the time they said that Kashmiris will become the Indian citizens. And Kashmiris became the Indian citizen, but in reverse, that Indian citizen couldn't become a Kashmiri citizen. You will remember that. So we have to make them understand that, look, we love them as much as we love the rest of the Indians. And they are as much Indians as the rest of the Indians. And here I like to quote Mr. Vajpayee's statement when he went to Kashmir one day, and he suddenly, and that was his own idea, he just got into that mood, he went there, and he said, we will deal with the Kashmiri in the Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat and Insaniyat. And that is one line which he spoke, which has left a lasting impression on them. I think what Prime Minister Modi is also now saying, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, and Sabka Vikas. If that line is picked up by them, and perhaps if it is spoken in Urdu, in the language in which they understand better, perhaps it will bring them also on the line. And now also when he said Dil se duri and Delhi se duri ko hatana hai, and we really walk the talk. That is very important, that we walk the talk. What we say, we do. That is very important. Because unless that is done, you cannot bring them along. And Kashmiri mind is a bit of a complicated mind. I've written in the book on that, because over the years, their history has been such that they have suffered. And they don't really generally like to believe people. And they may not say so, but they may listen to you and still they may have a doubt in their mind. You have to go out of your way to remove that doubt in their mind.
Well, thank you so much, General, for writing this book. And I completely agree with you. We need to walk the talk when it comes to Kashmir. Thank you so much, General. And also thank you so much, Dr. Karan Singh Saab, Ambassador, General Hasnain. Thank you so much for joining this program of ThePrint. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.